Sometimes the people you trust the most, the ones you expect to stand beside you in life's biggest moments, are the very people who betray you the hardest. Imagine saving money for years, putting your dreams on hold just to help family, only to realize they see you as nothing more than a wallet or a convenient sacrifice. Would you smile, stay silent, and give in again? Or would you finally stand up, even if it meant walking away from everyone you ever knew? Today, I'll tell you the story of how I discovered my family's betrayal, how they tried to steal my wedding from me, and how I taught them a lesson they'll never forget. I froze in the hallway, one hand braced against the wall for balance, the other clutching a wedding magazine so tight that the glossy pages crumpled in my grip. Just a few steps away, the dining room door was cracked open. Through the thin gap, voices slipped out, voices I knew too well. I wasn't even supposed to be home. My marketing meeting downtown ended an hour early, and I thought I'd surprise my parents by dropping in. Instead, they were the ones surprising me. "She'll cover everything." My younger sister Lila's voice rang out, high-pitched with laughter, just like she did for my wedding. Her words sliced through the air, sharp and cruel. "That's what big sisters are for," my mother chimed in. And then came the sound that shattered me. A burst of chuckles from both of my parents. I felt my stomach tighten painfully. "We've already told everyone about the combined celebration," my mom added proudly, her voice filled with that self-satisfied tone she always used when she thought she'd arranged something brilliant. My father cleared his throat. "Your anniversary deserves as much attention as her wedding. 5 years is a milestone." My grip on the magazine loosened, and it slipped soundlessly onto the carpet. I didn't bend to pick it up. I couldn't move at all. Blood roared in my ears, my chest rising and falling shallowly as if I couldn't get enough air. With my free hand, I clutched the strap of my handbag to keep from trembling. 5 years of therapy, 5 years of learning to see my own worth gone in an instant. I was 10 years old again, standing by the cake table as Lila blew out my birthday candles on my cake. She unwrapped my presents, everyone clapping for what a generous little girl she was. And me? I was told to be proud, to share, to smile. Some things never changed. I backed away from the door carefully, not daring to make a sound. My legs carried me out of the house, through the porch, and into the safety of my car. I dropped into the driver's seat, hands limp in my lap. The keys dangled from my fingers, but I didn't start the engine. Not yet. I needed Robert. Hovering over his name in my contacts, I took 3 shaky breaths and pressed call. He answered on the second ring, his warm voice wrapping around me. "Hey, beautiful. How was the meeting?" "They're trying to do it again, Rob," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. "But this time I won't let them." 5 years earlier, Lila had announced her engagement to a man named Daniel. Just 2 weeks later, my father had pulled me aside into his study. "Daniel lost his job," he said, his hand heavy on my shoulder. "They need help with the wedding expenses. It's temporary. Family comes first, Grace. Your sister needs this." Mom appeared in the doorway, arms folded, her eyes narrowing. "If you really loved your sister." And just like that, I had handed over every cent I had. $15,000, my entire savings, my education fund, my future. "It's just 1 semester," Mom told me when I had to drop out of college. "You can always go back." But semesters turned into years. I worked 2 jobs, I watched my friends graduate while I shelved my dreams. And meanwhile, Lila danced in a wedding gown that cost more than my old Toyota. That night, standing on the reception floor while the band played Sisters by Rosemary Clooney, I whispered a promise to myself. Never again. 2 weeks after overhearing that awful conversation, Mom invited us over for dinner. "Just a casual get-together," she said cheerfully on the phone. But I knew better. Her voice carried that rehearsed excitement she only used when she was plotting something. The table was set with the good china, the one reserved for Easter and major announcements. Never a good sign. Lila and Daniel arrived 15 minutes late, as always. They swept in, perfectly polished, laughing like they owned the place. We'd barely passed around the rolls when Mom clasped her hands together. "We have the most brilliant idea." I felt Robert's hand slip into mine under the table. Mom continued, her eyes sparkling. "We thought, how meaningful would it be to combine Grace's wedding with Lila and Daniel's 5th anniversary? A shared celebration. Beautiful symbolism." Lila reached into her tote bag and pulled out a thick folder, color-coded and tabbed. "I've already started a list. Don't worry, we'll have separate cakes, of course, and a special dance for each couple. The colors should match my original wedding for continuity. The room tilted slightly. All eyes shifted to me, waiting for my automatic yes. I forced a breath. Let me think about it. Silence dropped like a stone. Mom's smile froze in place. Dad blinked rapidly, as though he couldn't process my words. Lila's mouth opened, then closed again. Think about it? Dad repeated finally. He reached over and patted my shoulder. Always practical. That's why we know you'll take care of the finances. Lila's eyes shimmered with tears she'd practiced in the mirror. I thought you'd be excited for us. Mom gave me the look, the one that always meant keep the peace. She slid the bowl of mashed potatoes closer to me. Naomi will come around, she said lightly. I smiled and nodded, the perfect daughter act. I'm sure it will be beautiful, I managed. The words burned on my tongue, bitter as ash. But inside a spark flared. A single thought burned through the ice forming in my chest. Never again. That night, I told Robert the first was staying over at my parents' house to pick up some things. But really, I needed to know what else they were hiding from me. The glow of the family computer lit the darkened study as I sat in Dad's leather chair. My stomach churned with guilt. I knew I shouldn't be snooping. But Robert's words echoed in my mind. Trust your instincts. If something doesn't add up, find the truth. My hand shook as I opened Mom's email. And there it was. A chain between her and Lila. Subject line, vendor payments, Grace. Don't worry about the deposits, Mom had written. Edward and I have assured everyone that Grace will cover all expenses once contracts are finalized. I clicked deeper. Each message another stab to my heart. Screenshots of venues, catering menus, DJ packages, each with notes that the bride me would handle payment. A notification pinged on Mom's tablet, still logged into her Amazon account. Without thinking, I tapped it. My breath hitched. A wedding dress order. Not my dress. A second dress ordered just 3 days earlier. The confirmation email listed my credit card number. I texted Robert in a panic. Need your bathroom. Our secret code for an emergency call. He answered instantly. What happened? They've been planning this for months, I whispered. Lila used my card to buy another wedding dress. One that fits her vision. That's fraud, Robert snapped, his usually calm tone edged with fury. Grace, that's credit card fraud. There's more. My voice cracked. I pulled up my banking app. Remember those deposits I couldn't trace last month? They weren't deposits. They were withdrawals. For wedding expenses. Robert was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Your parents got a call last week. Someone pretending to be your wedding coordinator told them you wanted a simple ceremony, that you didn't need their help financially. The puzzle pieces slammed together with sickening clarity. I minimized the email window and spotted a file on the desktop. W+L budget final. Against my better judgment, I opened it. An Excel sheet appeared. Neat rows and columns meticulously color-coded. Venue $22,000. Catering $15,000. Entertainment $8,000. Flowers $7,000. Photography $6,000. Dresses, plural $5,000. At the bottom, the total $63,000. And in Lila's purple font, one final note. Grace's responsibility. My chest tightened so hard I thought I might pass out. I leaned back in Dad's chair, staring at the family photo on his desk. The 4 of us at Lila's wedding. Mom glowing with pride. Dad raising his glass. Lila radiant in her designer gown. And me smiling, hiding the fact that I had just emptied my entire education fund for her happiness. The picture mocked me now. While still searching, I noticed a journal tucked in the desk drawer. Mom's handwriting on the cover. I hesitated, then flipped it open. Recent entry. Grace has always been the responsible one. She'll understand this is for family. I wanted to scream. That same week, Dad had told me they were struggling financially. But in the journal, tucked alongside the entries, was a receipt from the Hillcrest Country Club. $5,000. His annual golf membership. The bile rose in my throat. I snapped photos of everything and forwarded them to myself. Tomorrow I would begin dealing with this. No more silence. The next morning my phone buzzed while I was at work. A message from Jessica, my oldest friend, the one who ran events for a living. Call me ASAP. Lila just contacted us. saying she's handling your wedding arrangements. My blood ran cold. I forwarded her the budget file before calling. Grace, Jessica said, her voice vibrating with outrage. This isn't normal family behavior. This is financial abuse. They're gaslighting you. Later that evening, Robert's sister Emily stopped by our apartment. Unlike me, she had broken away from her controlling parents years ago. She spread the printouts across the table, studying each one. The problem isn't just Lila, Emily explained. Your mom enables it. See the pattern? Lila creates the crisis. Your mom offers the solution, but it always requires your sacrifice. And your dad? He enforces it. You've been conditioned to accommodate. Our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who sometimes joined us for coffee, wandered in just then with a plate of cookies. She took one look at the mess of papers and nodded sadly. I've watched this dynamic for years, dear, she said softly. Your sister takes. Your mother facilitates. Your father demands. And you've always been the one to give in. I closed my eyes. Not anymore. But even as I said it, my voice trembled that I didn't sleep that night. The words from my father's voicemail kept replaying in my mind, each repetition cutting deeper. 18 words. Just 18, and my entire sense of belonging collapsed. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it. Was this punishment? A lesson? Or was it final, like the slam of a door I would never be allowed to open again? By morning, I realized I had two choices. I could crumble under the weight of their rejection, or I could stand up, even if my legs shook. But here's the thing about family betrayal. It doesn't just sting once. It spreads, creeping into everything, poisoning the smallest memories. I couldn't even make coffee without thinking of my mother teaching me how to hold the pot steady, or walk down the street without remembering my father's hand guiding me across. And now those hands had pushed me away. 2 days passed. No follow-up call. No explanation. Just silence. On the third day, I decided to reach out. Not to beg, but to demand clarity. I dialed my mother's number, hands trembling, my heart thudding like a drumline. Hello. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Mom, it's me. A pause. Long enough to sting. Oh, hi, Emily. Emily. Not Em. Not Sweetie. Just my full name, sharp as glass. I got Dad's message, I said slowly. I need to understand what's happening. Why are you cutting me off? She exhaled, the kind of sigh that carried judgment. Your father made the decision. We think it's best. You've changed, Emily. You're not the daughter we raised. The words knocked the wind out of me. Not the daughter we raised. What did that even mean? Changed how? Because I chose to live differently? Because I'm not following your blueprint. My voice cracked. You're too independent, she said coldly. You question too much. You don't fit anymore. Fit. Like I was some puzzle piece tossed from the box because it didn't match the picture. I wanted to scream, to beg, to cry. But instead I went silent. My mother filled the gap. Don't come to the reunion, Emily. It'll be easier this way. For everyone. And then she hung up. No argument. No room for explanation. Just another slammed door. I sat there, phone still in my hand, heart pounding, mind racing. For the first time I realized this wasn't about me making mistakes. This was about control. They wanted obedience, not love. And when I stepped outside their script, they erased me. That night, I opened my journal, the one I'd kept hidden since college, and I wrote, "They think they ended me, but maybe they just set me free." It was a dangerous thought, one that sparked both fear and determination, because freedom meant loneliness, but it also meant I could finally decide who I wanted to be. Weeks passed. The silence from my family grew louder, heavier. I expected my sisters, Anna and Claire, to reach out. Surely they wouldn't just ignore me. But when I called Anna, she didn't pick up. I texted Claire, no response. It was like they'd been coached to pretend I didn't exist. First I cried, then I raged, then slowly I numbed. But numbness can be useful. It creates space. And in that space I started to rebuild. I poured myself into work, taking on extra projects. I reconnected with an old college friend, Natalie, who had always been blunt but loyal. One night over takeout, I finally told her everything. "They just cut you off?" she asked, stunned. "Just like that," I said, stabbing at my noodles. "No explanation beyond you've changed." She shook her head. Emily, that's not family. That's a cult with matching DNA. Her words made me laugh for the first time in weeks. A small laugh, but real. And maybe that's when the idea first started forming, quiet, dangerous, but undeniable. They didn't want me, fine. But they didn't get to rewrite the story of who I was. I would. Then came Christmas. The reunion I'd been banished from was in full swing, plastered all over social media. Smiling cousins, endless food, matching pajamas. And there, right in the middle of the photos, my parents beaming as if their family was whole. The rage I'd buried came flooding back. They wanted to erase me from the picture. But what if I reminded them that erasing me had consequences? That night, I sat at my laptop and opened a blank document. At the top I typed, "Inheritance records, public access." You see, what my parents had forgotten was that family secrets don't stay buried forever. And they'd left plenty of cracks in the foundation. It started with property records. My grandparents had owned land, lots of it. I remembered overhearing whispers years ago about who got what, who was left out, who deserved more. And I knew deep down those whispers were wounds waiting to bleed. After hours of digging, I found it. The will. It wasn't supposed to be easy to access, but public documents have a way of surfacing when you know where to look. And there it was, in black and white. My parents had cut my aunt, their own sister, out of the inheritance entirely. Every dollar, every acre of land funneled to my father. My chest tightened. I remembered how Aunt Lydia had vanished from family gatherings years ago. Her name rarely spoken. Now I understood why. She'd been erased just like me. The more I read, the angrier I became. This wasn't just about control. This was a pattern. Erase, exclude, erase again. Anyone who didn't play by their rules was disposable. So I made a decision. If they wanted to act like I didn't exist, then I would become the ghost they could never escape. The truth was my weapon, and I was ready to use it. The first step was reaching out to Aunt Lydia. It took days of searching, but finally I found her living 2 states away, quietly, almost invisibly. When she picked up the phone, her voice was cautious. "Hello, Aunt Lydia? It's Emily, your niece." A pause. "I wasn't sure any of you remembered me," she said softly. "Oh, I remember," I told her. "And I know what they did to you. I think they're doing it to me, too." Her voice cracked when she whispered, "They cut you out, didn't they?" "Yes, and I'm done being silent about it." That conversation lit a fuse. Lydia had stories, ones that painted my parents in a light so dark I barely recognized them. Stories of manipulation, of lies, of betrayal so sharp it still scarred her decades later. And as I listened, one thing became clear. I wasn't alone. I wasn't the first. But maybe I could be the last. By January I had a plan. I wasn't going to beg my family to let me back in. I wasn't going to cry outside the locked doors of their perfect reunions. I was going to build something stronger. A truth so undeniable it would shatter the lies they'd built their empire on. And maybe, just maybe, it would finally set me free. But here's the thing about truth. Once you decide to dig it up, you can't control what else you'll find buried. And what I found next, well, it didn't just change how I saw my parents. It changed everything. The new year began with frost on the windows and fire in my chest. Every morning I woke up with the same thought. This ends with me. For weeks I lived a double life. By day I was just Emily, the coworker who showed up on time, the neighbor who waved politely, the friend who laughed over coffee. But by night I was something else entirely. A detective, a historian, a woman clawing her way through decades of secrets. The more I uncovered, the more I understood. My family didn't cut me off because I was different. They cut me off because I was dangerous. Dangerous to the story they'd been telling for generations. Late one Friday night, I sat at my desk, papers scattered like leaves after a storm. Property deeds, probate files, newspaper clippings, even faded photographs I had begged Aunt Lydia to send. One detail caught my eye, something I had missed before. A land transfer, dated nearly 20 years ago. According to the record, my grandparents had intended to divide their land equally between all 3 siblings, my father, my Aunt Lydia, and my Uncle Daniel. But the final deed told a different story. All of it, every acre, had gone to my father. My pulse quickened. This wasn't inheritance. This was theft, wrapped neatly in legal ink. I called Lydia immediately. "Do you remember anything about Grandpa's land?" I asked. Silence hummed on the other end. Then she whispered, I remember being told it wasn't mine, that I hadn't earned it. Your father said I was irresponsible, that it was safer in his hands. Her voice shook, but her anger was steady. He made me believe it was my fault, Emily. For years I thought I wasn't worthy, but I know now it was never about worth. It was about control. Control. The word echoed like a hammer. My father hadn't just erased people. He'd erased their futures. The next day I went deeper. I searched county court records, hunting for patterns, and they were everywhere. Loans taken in my Uncle Daniel's name without his knowledge. Debts shifted onto Lydia. Quiet lawsuits buried under technical jargon. Piece by piece the puzzle formed. My parents had built their perfect life on the backs of the people they discarded, and I, stubborn, questioning, unwilling to play the part, was next in line to be erased. But here's the thing about erasure. It only works if you stay silent. And I wasn't silent anymore. One night I printed everything, dozens of pages, bound neatly into a folder. I stared at it for hours, knowing what it represented. It wasn't just evidence. It was leverage. I didn't want revenge. Not exactly. What I wanted was the truth to exist outside their grip, even if it meant burning bridges that could never be rebuilt. But truth comes at a cost. And the first payment came when my sister Anna finally called. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was at work when her name flashed across my phone. My stomach twisted, but I answered. Emily, she said, her voice low. We need to talk. For a moment I forgot how to breathe. Anna? You actually. Don't get excited, she snapped. I'm only calling because Dad found out you've been digging. My throat went dry. So he knows. He knows, she confirmed. And he's furious. He says if you don't stop, he'll make sure you regret it. A chill ran through me. Is that a threat? It's a promise, she whispered. Then softer. Please, Emily, just let it go. You don't understand the damage you're doing. But I did understand. Better than she realized. The damage wasn't me exposing the truth. The damage was what my parents had done, hidden under decades of silence. I can't, I told her. I won't. She exhaled sharply. Then you're on your own. The line went dead. For a long time I just sat there, the hum of the office around me fading into nothing. Anna had chosen her side, and it wasn't mine. That night I cried harder than I had in months, not because I was scared, but because I finally knew without a doubt that my sisters weren't coming to save me. I was in this fight alone. The weeks that followed were a blur of shadows and whispers. I started noticing cars parked too long on my street. Anonymous calls that hung up the moment I answered. Even my landlord mentioned someone had been asking questions about me. First I thought it was paranoia, but then I got the letter. No return address. Just my name on the envelope. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Stop digging, or you'll end up like Daniel. I froze. My Uncle Daniel, the one who had disappeared years ago. His name barely spoken. They always said he'd moved away, started over, didn't want contact. But what if that wasn't true? That night I barely slept. Images of Daniel haunted me, laughing at cookouts, sneaking candy to us kids, then suddenly gone. No goodbye. No explanation. I had to know the truth. So I went back into the records, deeper this time, and there it was, buried under years of dust. A police report, dated the year Daniel disappeared. My hand shook as I read it. Daniel hadn't left willingly. There had been an accident, a suspicious one, a fire on his property. He'd survived, but barely. And afterward, he'd been committed to a psychiatric facility under my father's signature. My breath caught. He hadn't vanished. He'd been locked away. I called Lydia in tears. Did you know about Daniel? I asked, my voice breaking. Silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Then she whispered, I always suspected, but I didn't have proof. He stopped writing, stopped calling. They told me he didn't want me, that he was unstable. Her voice cracked. But it wasn't him, was it? It was them. I pressed the phone to my ear, my whole body trembling. They erased him, Lydia. Just like they erased you. Just like they're trying to erase me. We cried together, two women bound by the same wound. But when the tears dried, something stronger remained. Resolve. If my parents thought silence would protect them, they were wrong. Because I wasn't afraid anymore. And I wasn't alone. The next step was dangerous, maybe reckless. But I couldn't turn back now. I booked a ticket to the town where Daniel had last been seen, to the facility that still stood, hidden behind tall iron gates. When I arrived, the air smelled of disinfectant and old secrets. The receptionist eyed me suspiciously when I asked about Daniel. "I'm sorry, we can't share patient information," she said. I leaned forward, my voice steady. "He's my uncle, and I know he didn't choose to be here. I just need to know if he's alive." The woman hesitated. Then slowly she nodded. "He's here. He doesn't get visitors. Ever." My chest ached. Decades. My uncle had been locked away for decades, forgotten by the people who claimed to love him. "Can I see him?" I whispered. She looked around, then lowered her voice. 10 minutes. That's all." The door opened and there he was. Older, thinner, but unmistakably Daniel. His eyes, once so bright, were clouded with confusion, but when they landed on me, something flickered. Recognition. "Emily." His voice was hoarse, disused. Tears spilled down my cheeks. "It's me, Uncle Daniel. I found you." For a moment he just stared. Then slowly he began to cry. "They told me. Nobody wanted me," he whispered. "They lied," I said fiercely. "I want you. Lydia wants you. They couldn't erase you. Not anymore." In that sterile room, surrounded by the ghosts of his stolen years, I made a silent vow. My family's reign of silence was over, and the world was going to hear the truth. But the truth has teeth, and once you set it free, it doesn't just bite your enemies, it bites everyone, and soon it would come for me too. When I left that facility, I wasn't the same person who had walked in. I had gone there desperate for answers, bracing myself for disappointment. Instead, I had walked out with something far heavier: confirmation. Proof that my family's darkest secrets weren't paranoia or exaggeration. They were real. My Uncle Daniel had been hidden away, silenced, erased, just like they had tried to erase me. I sat in my rental car for nearly an hour, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I thought about the years Daniel had lost, the birthdays, the holidays, the life he should have had. And I thought about the faces of the people who had done this to him, my parents. They hadn't just stolen land. They had stolen lives. And now it was time for the world to know. The plan came to me slowly, like a fog lifting. I couldn't just confront them in private anymore. That would give them the power to twist the story, to gaslight me again, to deny what I had seen with my own eyes. No, this time the truth had to be public. So I started organizing. I scanned every document, every record. I transcribed my conversations with Aunt Lydia. I even wrote down every detail of my meeting with Daniel, his words etched into my memory. And then I created something my parents couldn't erase. File. I called it the family record. It wasn't just evidence. It was a weapon. And I sent it everywhere. Emails to local journalists, posts on community boards, even copies to extended relatives who had long accepted my parents' version of the story. I knew the risk. Once it was out, I couldn't take it back. But that was the point. For the first time in my life, I wasn't protecting them. I was protecting the truth. The fallout began almost instantly. Within days, reporters were calling, sniffing around the story. Some relatives who had ignored me for years suddenly wanted to talk. And then came the phone call I knew would eventually come. My mother. Her voice was brittle, sharp as glass. "What have you done, Emily?" I held the phone steady. "I told the truth. You've destroyed this family," she hissed. "No," I said, my voice calm. "You destroyed it the day you locked Daniel away. The day you stole from Lydia. The day you decided love was conditional." Her breath caught, as though I had struck her. "You don't understand," she whispered. "We did what we had to." "No," I said firmly. "You did what you wanted to. And now the world knows." She tried again, softer this time, her voice trembling. "We're your parents. Doesn't that mean anything?" I closed my eyes. A younger version of me would have folded in an instant at those words, desperate for their approval. But not anymore. "It used to," I admitted. "But not anymore." And then, for the first time in my life, I hung up on my mother. The weeks that followed were chaos. Stories about my family appeared in local papers. Neighbors whispered. Old friends from childhood sent me cautious messages of support. Some relatives thanked me for being brave. Others called me a traitor. But none of it mattered as much as the day I walked back into that facility to see Daniel again. This time, I brought Lydia with me. The reunion was quiet, tender, filled with tears. Lydia held her brother's hand as if afraid he would vanish again. And Daniel, fragile but present, smiled through his tears. "They can't hide you anymore," I told him softly. "You're free now." He squeezed my hand weakly. "Because of you." But I shook my head. "Because of us. Because we finally stopped being afraid." In that sterile room, surrounded by the scars of everything we'd lost, something new was born. A kind of family my parents could never destroy. One built not on silence but on truth. Of course, my parents didn't go quietly. They tried everything: legal threats, public denials, even smear campaigns. My father stood in front of cameras and called me unstable, claiming I was inventing stories out of bitterness. But the evidence spoke louder than his words. And little by little, the power they'd wielded for decades began to crumble. The land deeds were reviewed, lawsuits were reopened, and people started asking questions my parents couldn't answer. They weren't untouchable anymore. One night, months later, I sat on my porch, the summer air warm against my skin. Lydia sat beside me sipping tea. Daniel was asleep inside, recovering slowly but finally free to live on his own terms. I looked at the stars and thought about the girl I used to be. The one who begged for her parents' love. The one who thought silence would keep her safe. She was gone. In her place stood someone new. Someone who had learned that family isn't defined by blood or obligation. It's defined by love, by truth, by the people who stand beside you when the world falls apart. "Do you regret it?" Lydia asked quietly, breaking the silence. I thought for a long time before answering. "No," I said finally. "I regret the years we lost. But I don't regret telling the truth. I'd rather stand in the light alone than live in the dark surrounded by liars." Lydia smiled faintly. "Then you're stronger than all of them combined." I didn't feel strong, but I felt free. And maybe after everything that was enough. The story doesn't end with forgiveness. I can't forgive parents who chose control over love, who destroyed their own children to protect their image. But it does end with survival. And sometimes survival is the greatest victory of all. So if you're listening and you've ever been cut off, betrayed, or erased by the very people who were supposed to love you most, this is what I want you to know. You are not crazy. You are not unworthy. And you are not alone. There are others like you, people who've walked through fire, who've been told to stay silent, who've been cast out for daring to see the truth. But silence doesn't keep you safe. It only keeps you small. Speak, shout, write, whatever it takes. Because once the truth is free, they can't control you anymore. I lost my family, but I found myself. And in the end, that was worth everything.